Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. You want to know what real fear feels like? It's not the jump scare in a horror movie or the adrenaline rush from a roller coaster. Real fear is standing 300 feet underground in a reinforced concrete bunker, watching something that shouldn't exist get wheeled past you in a cage that cost more than most people's houses. My name is Dr. Benedict Yeager, and for the past 8 years, I've worked at a place that doesn't officially exist. The government calls it Research Facility Erebus, but we who work here know it by its real purpose. It's America's black site cryptid prison. We don't house terrorists or war criminals. We contain things that make grown men weep, and scientists question everything they thought they knew about reality. The Nevada desert stretches endlessly above our heads, but down here in the depths of Erebus, sunlight is just a memory. The facility runs 15 levels deep, each one more secure than the last. Level 1 houses the research labs where we study our guests. By level 10, we're dealing with entities that require electromagnetic containment fields. Level 15, Unit 0, is reserved for things so dangerous that even looking at them wrong could get you killed. I've seen creatures that phase through solid matter, entities that feed on human emotions until their victims become hollow shells, and beings that exist in dimensions our minds can't fully comprehend. After 8 years, I thought I'd seen everything this job could throw at me. I was wrong. The convoy arrived at 0300 hours on a Tuesday morning in September. I watched from the observation deck as 12 Blackhawks descended from the star-filled sky, their rotors cutting through the desert silence like mechanical thunder. Behind them came the heavy transport, a modified C-130 carrying something that required an escort of Apache gunships circling overhead like metallic vultures. Director Julia Abbott stood beside me, her silver hair pulled back in its usual severe bun. She'd run Erebus for 12 years, and in all that time, I'd never seen her look genuinely worried. Tonight, her hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she gripped her coffee cup. "What exactly are we receiving, Director?" I asked, watching the ground crew move with practiced efficiency despite the obvious tension radiating from every person on that tarmac. "Something that shouldn't exist even by our standards," she replied without taking her eyes off the transport. The retrieval team found it in the Appalachian Mountains after reports of entire hunting parties vanishing. When our containment specialists finally cornered it, we lost 14 operatives. The cargo bay of the C-130 opened with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a containment unit unlike anything I'd ever seen. The cage was constructed from reinforced titanium steel alloy, wrapped in electromagnetic dampening coils and lined with what appeared to be lead shielding. Warning symbols covered every surface: radiation hazard, biological containment, and others I didn't recognize. 14? I couldn't hide the shock in my voice. Our operatives were the best trained individuals in the world at handling dangerous cryptids. It wasn't just the killing, Benedict. It was how it killed them. Abbott's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The survivors reported something impossible. A werewolf, but not like the lone specimens we've contained before. This one had 3 heads, each one seeming to operate independently while somehow working in perfect coordination. I felt my blood turn to ice water. In my years at Erebus, we'd successfully contained exactly 7 lycanthropes. They were dangerous, certainly, but manageable with proper protocols. A multi-headed variant represented something entirely different, a biological impossibility that challenged everything we understood about the lycanthrope genome. The cage was loaded onto a specialized transport platform, its weight requiring 4 industrial-grade hydraulic systems to move it. As it passed beneath our observation window, I caught a glimpse of the interior through the reinforced viewing port. What I saw defied logic. The creature sat in perfect human form. A man appearing to be in his 30s, with dark hair and an unremarkable build. He looked completely ordinary, like someone you might pass on the street without a second glance. But his eyes held an intelligence that seemed to pierce right through the titanium walls of his cage and bore directly into my soul. As the transport moved past, the man looked up directly at our observation window. Despite the fact that our viewing area was one-way glass and he should have seen only his own reflection, his gaze found mine instantly. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face, revealing teeth that were just a fraction too sharp to be entirely human. Then he mouthed a single word that made my heart stop. Soon. Get him to Unit 0 immediately, Director Abbott ordered into her radio. Full containment protocols. I want electromagnetic barriers, sedative gas systems, and armed guards on 8-hour rotations. Nothing gets in or out of that cell without my direct authorization. The next hour was a carefully orchestrated ballet of security procedures. The creature, now designated Alpha 666, was transported to the deepest level of Erebus, using our most secure lift system. Unit 0 consisted of a single cell, but calling it a cell was like calling the Grand Canyon a ditch. The containment chamber was a perfect cube, 30 feet on each side, constructed from 6-inch thick reinforced concrete lined with lead, and fitted with energy-dampening systems that could suppress supernatural abilities. I watched from the control room as the transfer was completed. Alpha 666 was moved via remote handling systems, robotic arms that kept our personnel at a safe distance while maintaining precise control. The creature remained perfectly calm throughout the entire process, never struggling against his restraints or showing any signs of distress. That should have been our first warning. As the cage door opened and the restraints were removed, Alpha 666 stepped calmly into his new home. He examined the walls with casual interest, running his fingers along the surface as if he were checking into a hotel room rather than a maximum security containment cell. Subject appears docile, reported Agent Firth, my security liaison and one of the few people in this facility I trusted completely. Vitals are normal, no signs of transformation stress or aggressive behavior. I studied the monitors showing Alpha 6666 from multiple angles. The infrared readings were wrong. Instead of the typical single heat signature we expected from lycanthropes, the thermal imaging showed 3 distinct energy patterns overlapping within his human form, like 3 separate entities occupying the same space. Run a full spectral analysis, I ordered. Something's not right about his biology. As if he could hear my words through the soundproof barriers, Alpha 666 turned to look directly at the camera. His smile widened, and this time I could clearly see that his canine teeth had extended into subtle points. "Dr. Yeager," he said, his voice somehow carrying clearly through our communication systems despite the fact that the intercom was switched off. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." The blood drained from my face. Our containment cells were designed to prevent any form of communication without our systems being activated. No creature had ever been able to breach our audio barriers. "How can he?" Firth started to ask. Alpha 666 continued as if we were having a casual conversation. "You have quite the reputation, Doctor. 8 years of successfully containing my kind. You must be very proud of your work here." I found my voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "How are you communicating with us?" "The same way you'll communicate with us, when the time comes." His eyes seemed to glow in the harsh LED lighting of his cell. "You see, Benedict, may I call you Benedict? You've made a fundamental error in your understanding of what I am." "Elaborate," Director Abbott commanded, having joined us in the control room. Alpha 6666's gaze shifted to her, and his expression hardened. "Ah, Director Abbott, the architect of so much suffering, tell me, how do you sleep at night, knowing what you've done to my people?" "Your people are dangerous anomalies that pose a threat to human civilization," Abbott replied with practiced coldness. "This facility serves to protect." "Protect?" Alpha 6666's laugh was like breaking glass. "You mean like you protected the pack in Colorado? Or the family in Oregon whose only crime was existing in a world that fears what it doesn't understand?" I felt a chill run down my spine. He was referring to operations from before my time at Erebus, classified missions that I'd only heard whispered about in the facility's darker corridors. "You think you're the hunter," Alpha 6666 continued, his human facade beginning to slip as his eyes reflected the overhead lighting with an unnatural amber glow. "But you're about to learn what it feels like to be prey." The lights in his cell began to flicker, despite the fact that our electrical systems had multiple redundancies and backup generators. The electromagnetic dampeners started producing a low humming sound that seemed to resonate through the concrete itself. "Sir," Firth said urgently, "we're getting anomalous readings from all the containment cells. Every cryptid in the facility is showing increased activity levels. I looked at the bank of monitors displaying feeds from throughout Erebus. On level 3, our captured Wendigo was pacing frantically in its cell for the first time in 2 years. The shadow entity on level 7 was extending tendrils of darkness that probed the edges of its light-based containment system. Even our most docile specimens were showing signs of agitation. "They can sense me," Alpha 666 said with obvious satisfaction. "They know their Alpha has arrived." "Alpha?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand with a growing sense of dread. "3 heads, Benedict. 3 minds working as one. Do you know what that makes me in lycanthrope hierarchy?" His human form began to blur at the edges, as if reality couldn't quite contain what he truly was. "I'm not just another werewolf for your collection. I'm the pack leader every werewolf in North America answers to." The facility's emergency alarm began blaring, its red lights casting everything in hellish crimson. Through the concrete walls and electromagnetic barriers, I could hear something that made my soul freeze, howling. Not from Alpha 666's cell, but from outside the facility, from the desert above. "Sir," Firth shouted over the alarm. "Perimeter sensors are detecting multiple contacts approaching from all directions. Ground-penetrating radar shows at least 30 large forms moving toward the facility at high speed." Alpha 666's smile had become something altogether inhuman. "They're coming for me, Benedict. They're coming for all of us. And when they arrive, you'll finally understand that there are worse things than being a monster." The lights went out. In the darkness, the only illumination came from Alpha 6666's glowing eyes. Not 2, but 6 points of amber fire as his true nature began to emerge. Through the emergency lighting, I could see his silhouette changing, expanding, becoming something that shouldn't be possible. "The pack is here," he whispered, and his voice came from 3 throats simultaneously. "Let the hunt begin." The emergency lighting bathed everything in blood-red shadows as chaos erupted throughout Facility Erebus. I'd experienced containment breaches before. Single entities escaping their cells, localized system failures, the occasional psychic episode that required sedation protocols. But nothing had prepared me for what was happening now. Every monitor in the control room flickered with warnings, as our most dangerous prisoners began testing the limits of their confinement simultaneously. "Backup power engaged," Firth announced, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "All containment systems holding, but we're seeing unprecedented stress readings across the board." Through the reinforced observation window, Alpha 666 stood motionless in his cell, those 6 amber eyes fixed directly on me. His transformation had stopped mid-process, leaving him suspended between human and something far more terrifying. His torso had elongated, shoulders broadening to accommodate what I could only assume would become multiple necks. The air around him shimmered with an energy that our instruments couldn't properly measure. "Benedict," Director Abbott's voice cut through my paralysis. "I need you focused. What's our containment status on Alpha 666? I forced myself to look away from those hypnotic eyes and check the readings. Cell integrity at 97%. Electromagnetic dampeners functioning within normal parameters. But I paused, studying the energy signatures. "Director, the power draw from his cell has increased by 400% in the last 10 minutes. Whatever he's doing, it's requiring enormous amounts of energy." The howling from above ground grew louder, more coordinated. It wasn't the random calls of wild animals. This was communication, strategy. A symphony of predators coordinating their approach. Through the facility's external cameras, I could see shapes moving in the darkness beyond our perimeter lighting. Large forms that moved with purpose, staying just outside the range of our motion sensors. "How many are out there?" Abbott demanded, moving to stand beside Agent Firth at the tactical station. "Thermal imaging is picking up at least 40 distinct heat signatures," Firth reported, his fingers dancing across the control panels. "They're maintaining a perimeter approximately 2 miles out. But Benedict, they're not behaving like animals. Look at this formation." He brought up the tactical display on the main screen. The red dots representing the werewolves formed a perfect circle around Facility Erebus, each positioned at exactly the same distance from our underground structure. It was military precision that no pack of wild creatures should possess. "They're waiting for something," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. As if summoned by my words, Alpha 666's voice echoed through the control room despite our communication systems remaining offline. "Very good, Benedict. You're beginning to understand. They're waiting for my signal." I spun back to face his cell. He was closer to the observation window now, though I hadn't seen him move. The partial transformation made him appear impossibly tall, his shadow stretching across the containment chamber like reaching fingers. "What do you want?" Director Abbott stepped forward, her authority crackling in her voice despite the fear I could see in her eyes. "What I've always wanted, Julia." The way he spoke her name, with such casual familiarity, sent ice through my veins. Freedom. Not just for me, but for every soul you've caged in this concrete tomb. The facility shuddered, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to come from the earth itself. Emergency klaxons began wailing as structural stress alarms activated throughout the complex. "Sir," one of the technicians called out from across the control room, "we're detecting seismic activity directly beneath the facility. Multiple epicenters, moving in a coordinated pattern." The truth hit me with terrifying clarity. They're not just surrounding us. Some of them are underneath us, digging their way in. Abbott was already reaching for the emergency protocols manual, but Alpha 666's laughter stopped her cold. It wasn't coming from one throat anymore. The sound harmonized with itself, creating an otherworldly chorus that seemed to vibrate in our bones. "You can't stop what's coming," he said. And now his voice definitely originated from multiple sources. "My pack has been planning this for months. Every weakness in your defenses, every shift change, every backup system, we know it all." "How?" I found myself asking before I could stop myself. "Because we've been watching, Benedict. Learning. Adapting." His human features were becoming more defined again, but something fundamental had changed. When he smiled, I could see too many teeth. "Did you really think we were just mindless beasts? We're predators, yes, but we're also intelligent. We organize, we plan, and we remember every slight, every cruelty, every family member you've torn from our embrace." A new alarm joined the cacophony, the distinctive wail that indicated a containment breach somewhere in the facility. Then another, and another. "Level 7 breach," Firth shouted over the noise. "Firth, the shadow entity has compromised its containment." "Level 12 is showing multiple failures," another technician added. "The Harpy Collective has broken through their sonic barriers." I watched in horror as monitor after monitor displayed the same scene, our most dangerous prisoners systematically destroying their containment systems from within. But they weren't escaping randomly. Each breach followed a precise sequence, moving from the upper levels downward in a pattern that could only be coordinated. "They're creating a pathway," I breathed. "Alpha 666 is commanding them to clear a route down to Unit 0. Abbott grabbed the facility-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is Director Abbott. We are under coordinated attack. Implement Protocol Omega immediately. Seal all access routes to Level 15 and prepare for emergency evacuation." "It's too late for that," Alpha 6666 said, his voice now clearly coming from 3 distinct throats as his transformation accelerated. "My children above ground aren't the only ones you should fear. Tell me, Julia, do you remember Seattle?" The color drained from Abbott's face. Seattle was classified beyond even my clearance level. But I'd heard whispers. A facility like Erebus, but older. Something had gone wrong there 5 years ago, and the entire complex had been sealed with concrete and forgotten. "You were there," Abbott whispered. "You were part of what happened in Seattle." "Part of it?" Alpha 6666's laugh was pure predatory joy. "I orchestrated it, just like I'm orchestrating this. The only difference is that this time, I won't be leaving any survivors to tell tales." The transformation was accelerating now. His neck was lengthening, splitting at the base as 2 additional spinal columns emerged from his shoulders. The process should have been impossible. The amount of additional bone, muscle, and tissue required defied every law of biology I understood. But I was watching it happen in real time, documented by our cameras from every angle. "Level 5 breach! Level 4 breach!" The reports were coming faster now, each one representing another nightmare unleashed within our facility. Through the internal camera feeds, I could see chaos spreading through Erebus like a disease. The Wendigo from level 3 was rampaging through the research laboratories, its inhuman hunger driving it to consume everything in its path, including several members of our research staff who hadn't reached the emergency shelters in time. On level 7, the shadow entity had merged with the facility's lighting system, creating zones of absolute darkness where staff members simply vanished. Their screams echoed through the ventilation system, growing weaker and more distant until they stopped altogether. "We have to evacuate," Firth said urgently. "If the prisoners reach the armory or the power core—" "No," Abbott cut him off. "If we run, they'll escape into the general population. We contain this here, whatever the cost." Alpha 666 had been listening to our exchange, and now he focused those terrible amber eyes on Director Abbott. "Whatever the cost, how noble. But tell me, Julia, what will you do when your own staff start changing sides?" "What do you mean?" I demanded. But even as I asked, I thought I knew. The bite, Benedict. It's not just a weapon, it's recruitment. Every person my pack has encountered tonight who survived the initial attack is now part of our family, and they're already inside your precious facility. The implication hit me like a sledgehammer. The security teams we sent to contain the breaches are no longer working for you, Alpha 666 confirmed. Lycanthropy is beautifully efficient that way. One bite, and within hours, their loyalty shifts entirely. They remember their human lives, but their priorities change. As if summoned by his words, Agent Firth's radio crackled to life. "Control, this is Security Team Alpha. We've successfully contained the Level 7 breach, requesting permission to proceed to Level 10. I looked at Firth, then at Director Abbott. The voice on the radio sounded normal, professional. But something in the cadence was wrong. Too controlled, too calm for someone who had just faced down a shadow entity. "Team Alpha, what's your status on casualties?" Abbott asked carefully. "No casualties to report, Control. We handled the situation efficiently." The pause before efficiently was barely perceptible, but it was enough. Abbott and I exchanged glances. In 8 years of working together, our security teams had never emerged from a shadow entity encounter without casualties. The creatures fed on life force itself. Confronting one inevitably meant losses. "They're compromised," I whispered. Alpha 666's newest head was nearly fully formed now, creating a grotesque trinity of human faces sharing the same impossibly broad shoulders. Each head seemed to focus on a different aspect of the control room, creating the unsettling sensation that we were being watched from multiple angles simultaneously. "You're learning, Benedict, but knowledge without power is just another form of suffering." The middle head spoke while the other two seemed to be concentrating on something else. "Tell me, how long do you think your sealed doors will hold against werewolves with security clearances and intimate knowledge of this facility's layout?" The lights flickered again, and this time they stayed dim. Through the facility's internal camera network, I could see that several levels were now completely dark. On the monitors that still functioned, moving shapes flitted through corridors that should have been empty. Some were clearly inhuman, the elongated limbs of creatures that had never been entirely human to begin with. But others walked upright, moved with purpose, and wore the tactical gear of our security forces. "Level 11 is reporting system failures across all containment units," a technician announced, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We're losing telemetry from levels 12 through 14. "What about the failsafes?" Abbott demanded. "The emergency lockdown protocols?" "Not responding, ma'am. Someone with administrative access is overriding them from inside the system." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Administrative access was limited to senior staff, people who had been with the facility for years, people I trusted, people who had been assigned to security teams that should now be compromised. Alpha 666's transformation was nearing completion. The three heads were now distinct entities, each bearing his features but with subtle variations. The left head appeared younger, with eyes that held a cruel intelligence. The right head looked older, weathered by experiences I couldn't imagine. The center head, the original, watched me with an expression I could only describe as paternal disappointment. "You're beginning to understand the scope of your situation," the center head said. "But let me make it perfectly clear. This facility, everyone in it, Every creature you've imprisoned. It all belongs to me now." "Never," Abbott said through gritted teeth. She reached for a red panel on the control console, her fingers hovering over a switch I'd hoped never to see activated. "The nuclear option?" The left head laughed with genuine amusement. "How wonderfully human. Destroy everything rather than admit defeat." "If necessary," Abbott replied, but I could see the hesitation in her movements. "Julia," the right head spoke for the first time, its voice carrying the weight of years and bitter experience. "You know what happens if you trigger that system. The surface contamination alone will affect 3 counties. And the cover-up? How will you explain a nuclear incident in Nevada when this facility doesn't officially exist?" She was wavering. I could see it in her eyes, the calculation between unthinkable options. That's when the lights went out completely, plunging us into absolute darkness. Emergency battery power should have kicked in within seconds, but nothing happened. In the silence that followed, I could hear breathing that wasn't coming from any human throat. When Alpha 666 spoke again, his voice surrounded us from every direction, as if the facility itself had gained the power of speech. "The choice has been made for you, Julia. My pack controls your power systems now. They control your security networks. They control your staff." A pause, filled with the promise of violence. "Soon, they'll control you." In the darkness, I heard the distinctive sound of reinforced steel beginning to bend. The containment cell that had held Alpha 666 was failing, not from outside pressure, but from within. Whatever he had become in those final moments of transformation, it was too much for our systems to contain. "Benedict," his voice was closer now, no longer muffled by barriers. "You've spent 8 years studying creatures like me. Tell me, in all your research, did you ever consider what it would be like to become one of us?" I fumbled for my sidearm, muscle memory guiding my hand in the darkness. But before I could draw the weapon, emergency lighting finally activated, casting the control room in that familiar red glow. Alpha 666 stood in the center of the space, having somehow crossed the distance from his cell without any of us noticing. His 3 heads turned to regard each of us separately, Director Abbott frozen at the nuclear protocols panel, Agent Firth reaching for his radio, and me with my hand halfway to my holster. "Don't," the center head said simply. "We have much to discuss, and I'd prefer to do so while you're all still human." The left head smiled, revealing canines that had extended into proper fangs, though that status is naturally subject to change. Time froze in that blood-red emergency lighting as Alpha 666 stood before us, his 3 heads moving with predatory grace. Each face bore the same features, yet they felt like entirely different entities sharing one impossibly broad frame. The transformation had left him standing nearly 8 feet tall, his body a grotesque masterpiece of biological impossibility. 8 years. 8. Benedict, the center head spoke with gentle menace that made my skin crawl. 8 years studying my kind, cataloging our weaknesses, perfecting methods to contain us. But did you ever ask the right question? My hand remained frozen halfway to my sidearm, every instinct screaming at me to run while rational thought insisted there was nowhere to go. The control room felt smaller now, suffocating under the weight of his presence. "What question?" Director Abbott whispered, her fingers still hovering over the nuclear protocol switch like a lifeline she wasn't sure she could grasp. The right head turned toward her with movements that were too fluid, too coordinated. "Not what we are, Julia. What we were. Every creature in your facility was human once. Every monster you've caged had a life, a family, dreams you never bothered to understand." Through the control room's reinforced windows, I watched nightmare scenes unfold throughout the facility. Security personnel walked alongside creatures that had terrorized them for years. The Wendigo from level 3 moved through research levels with purpose. No longer the mindless, hunger-driven beast we'd studied, but something far more terrifying. An intelligent predator with specific goals. "The files," I realized with growing horror. "You're accessing our research data. Every weakness you've discovered about us over the years." Alpha 6666's left head smiled, revealing far too many teeth. "Every containment protocol, every psychological profile, We're ensuring that knowledge dies with this facility." Human screams echoed through the complex, but they were different from what I'd expected. Not random terror, but something systematic. Through camera feeds, I watched as our remaining staff were being hunted down by coordinated teams. But they weren't being killed outright. They were being herded, gathered in specific locations. "What are you doing to them?" I demanded. "Offering them the same choice we're about to offer you," the center head replied with paternal patience. "Evolution or extinction. Most are choosing wisely." The control room door exploded inward, twisted reinforced steel screaming as something with impossible strength tore through barriers designed to withstand military assault. Through the breach came Dr. Minka Grace, our head of xenobiology. But the woman I'd worked alongside for 3 years was gone. Her eyes held the same amber fire as Alpha 666's, and when she smiled, her canines had extended into predatory points. "Director," she said, her voice carrying unnatural harmonics, "the surface teams are in position. All perimeter defenses have been neutralized. We're ready to begin the final phase." "Final phase?" I asked, dreading the answer but needing to understand the scope of what we were facing. "The hunt doesn't end here, Benedict," Alpha 666 explained with teacher-like patience. "This facility was never our ultimate target. It was our training ground. Every technique you developed to contain us, we've spent 3 years turning it all into strength." Dr. Grace approached Director Abbott with inhuman speed, her movements flowing like liquid predation. Before Abbott could complete her desperate lunge for the nuclear switch, Grace's transformed strength pinned her arm with surgical precision. What followed was a demonstration of lycanthrope efficiency that chilled me to my core. Grace didn't savage Abbott like a wild animal. Instead, she bit her with clinical accuracy, her fangs penetrating the director's shoulder just long enough to inject the supernatural pathogen. Then she released her immediately, stepping back with medical detachment. 4 hours for full transformation, Grace explained, her scientific training intact despite her physical changes. During that time, you'll retain complete human consciousness. You'll understand exactly what's happening to your body and mind. Abbott collapsed to her knees, clutching her shoulder. Already, I could see veins of darkness spreading from the wound like living ink, following her circulatory system with purposeful intent. "Agent Firth," the left head commanded with military authority. "Your sidearm. Remove it slowly and place it on the console." Firth complied with mechanical precision, his movements betraying none of the resistance I would have expected. The realization hit me like a physical blow. His responses were too controlled. "How long?" I asked him, though I was beginning to understand with growing dread. "Since 0400 hours, Firth replied, his voice hollow. "Team Beta encountered something during the Level 9 containment breach. I was recruited during cleanup." He looked at me with eyes that held genuine regret beneath their amber glow. "I tried to resist, Benedict, but the pack bond is stronger than individual will." More figures entered the control room, staff members I recognized, creatures we'd held in containment for years, all moving together with coordination that defied every assumption about cryptid territorial behavior. "You see," Alpha 666's center head continued, "the greatest mistake your species makes is assuming we're like you, individualistic, competitive. We're pack animals, Benedict. Everything we do serves the greater family." Through the facility's external cameras, I watched as military vehicles approached Facility Erebus. But these weren't rescue forces. The werewolves on the surface were coordinating with them, guiding newcomers to specific entry points with obvious familiarity. "Government response teams?" I asked, though the sinking feeling in my stomach suggested otherwise. "In a manner of speaking," Grace replied. "Amazing how many of our kind have infiltrated key positions over the decades. Military command, intelligence agencies, even some of your oversight committees." From the shadows stepped a figure that made my blood freeze. General Dermot Clifford, our oversight committee's military liaison, a man I'd briefed personally dozens of times, sharing classified data with complete trust. When he smiled, his canines extended into familiar predatory points. "Hello, Dr. Yeager," he said, his voice carrying harmonic resonance. "I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time." "How long?" I managed to ask. 3 years, Clifford replied with satisfaction. The Denver facility was my first assignment after transformation. The experience was enlightening. It opened my perspective to possibilities I'd never considered. The scope of betrayal was staggering. 3 years of security briefings, operational reviews, all while he'd been actively working to undermine the system he was supposed to oversee. Every report I filed was genuinely designed to make these facilities more secure, Clifford continued, until we were ready to harvest everything you'd learned. Through external cameras, transport helicopters landed around the facility's perimeter. Figures emerged carrying equipment I didn't recognize. Devices that hummed with energy that made our containment systems look primitive. "What are those?" I asked. "Upgrades," Grace replied with scientific enthusiasm. "Your electromagnetic containment research was fascinating but incomplete. We've perfected the technology. Those devices don't contain supernatural entities, they enhance them." Alpha 666's 3 heads turned to focus on me simultaneously, creating a triangle of predatory attention. "Which brings us to you, Benedict. 8 years of research into lycanthrope biology. Knowledge of containment protocols for 17 different facilities." I felt sweat beading despite the climate control. "I won't help you." "You will," the right head replied with absolute certainty. "Because the alternative isn't death. It's watching every person you've worked with experience prolonged conscious transformation." The tactical implications were becoming clear. 17 facilities, I whispered. 17 facilities, Clifford confirmed. Each positioned near major population centers, military installations, government structures. Tonight isn't about escaping imprisonment. It's about ensuring our species never faces containment again. Through internal cameras, I could see systematic conversion continuing throughout Erebus. Werewolves worked with transformed staff, using intimate facility knowledge to corner and convert remaining personnel with ruthless efficiency. "Global coordination," Alpha 666's left head said with satisfaction. "Every facility conducting identical operations simultaneously. Military assets positioning for urban integration." Abbott had curled in a corner, her transformation accelerating as dark veins spread across her skin. "The cities," she gasped through the pain. "You're planning to do this to entire populations." "We're offering them choice," the center head corrected with patience. "Evolution or extinction, but the choice must be made." Dr. Grace approached me with measured steps, producing a syringe filled with something that gleamed silver in the emergency lighting. The liquid seemed to move within the container with its own purpose. "What is that?" I asked, though survival instinct already knew. "Concentrated lycanthrope essence," she replied with clinical detachment. "Much more controlled than a bite wound. The transformation will be gradual, allowing you to maintain consciousness throughout the process." I looked around the control room one final time. Director Abbott was fully transformed now, her human concerns replaced by pack loyalty. Agent Firth stood with soldier posture, his individual personality subsumed into something larger. Throughout the facility, staff members who had shown initial resistance now worked alongside their captors with apparent contentment. Among them, I could see Dr. Mulroney from our psychology department and Dr. Calton from xenobiology, both moving with the same coordinated purpose that defined pack behavior. Their transformation had been complete for hours now, their expertise now serving the collective rather than human interests. "The children," I said desperately, grasping for any leverage. "The nursery level. They don't deserve to be part of this." Alpha 666's 3 heads exchanged a look of silent communication that lasted only seconds, but felt like eternity. "Those children will make their choice as part of a pack family," the right head finally responded. "Not as isolated human individuals struggling with impossible decisions." Grace positioned the syringe against my neck, her enhanced strength making resistance academic. I could feel the needle's point pressing against skin. "Any final words?" Alpha 666's left head asked with genuine curiosity. I thought about 8 years of research. Contained creatures, the balance between human safety and humane treatment. "I hope you're wrong about humanity. I hope we find a way to maintain what makes us human without the isolation you claim defines us." "So do we," the right head replied, surprising me. "Competition makes the pack stronger. If humanity can evolve beyond its limitations without our intervention, that would be preferable. And if not, Then the choice was made long ago, the center head said with inevitable finality. In the fear that built these facilities, in choosing isolation over understanding. I felt the needle pierce my skin with surgical precision. Felt strange burning as something fundamentally alien entered my bloodstream. The change was immediate. Not just physical sensation, but a shift in consciousness I couldn't define. 6 hours for full integration, Grace explained. But you'll start experiencing benefits within the first hour. Enhanced senses, increased capabilities, and most importantly, pack awareness. As darkness crept in at my vision's edges, I could feel something changing in my nervous system. More than physical sensations, there was a subtle alteration suggesting the lifelong isolation was finally ending. The loneliness ends now. Benedict, Alpha 666's center head said as consciousness faded. Whatever comes next, you'll never have to endure it alone. The last thing I heard was hundreds of voices throughout the facility speaking in harmony, coordinating, planning, working together with unity I'd never experienced in human society. When I finally woke up, the world had fundamentally changed. I could hear everything now. Not just sounds, but emotional undertones behind every heartbeat, every breath. More than enhanced auditory perception, I could sense intentions, loyalties, the complex relationships that defined pack structure. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't alone inside my own head. The pack bond was like discovering a sense I'd never known I was missing. Every transformed person in Facility Erebus existed as a presence in my consciousness. Not controlling my thoughts, but simply there. Available for communication, support, shared decision-making. Welcome to the family, Benedict. Alpha 6666's voice reached me from multiple directions. How do you feel? I sat up slowly, testing enhanced senses and newfound strength. The control room looked different through transformed eyes, not just improved visual acuity, but the way I could perceive emotional resonance of the space itself. Different, I replied, surprised by harmonic undertones in my voice. Enhanced. The weight of individual responsibility is shared now, Director Abbott said, approaching with inhuman grace. Through the pack bond, I could sense her genuine contentment, profound relief at no longer bearing command decisions alone. Through facility cameras, I could see coordinated activity on every level. No chaos, no violence, just unified purpose directed toward goals that were now clear to me. The children? I asked. Though I could sense through the bond they were safe. Sleeping peacefully in the nursery level, Alpha 6666 center head confirmed. We've honored your request. They'll remain human for now, cared for by pack members. Dawn was breaking across the Nevada desert. Aircraft continued landing at intervals, bringing equipment from the other 16 facilities conducting identical operations. Phase 3, I said, understanding flooding through the pack bond. Urban integration teams are positioned, General Clifford confirmed, satisfaction rippling through our shared consciousness. Military assets coordinating with embedded pack leaders, government officials receiving evolutionary consultations. Through the bond, I could sense thousands of transformed individuals across North America, all working toward the same goal. Not conquest, but systematic offer of evolution to a species that had chosen isolation over connection. What happens now? I asked, testing new strength as I stood. Now, Alpha 66's center head said, 666, his three faces smiling in synchronization. We begin the real work. Not conquest, Benedict. Evolution. Creating a world where no conscious being ever has to face the universe alone. As dawn light filled the control room, I realized that Dr. Benedict Yeager had died sometime during the night. What remained was still me. My memories, personality, core identity intact, but integrated into something larger that would never again know the particular agony of human isolation. And in the cities beyond the desert, millions of people were about to discover what true evolution meant. The hunt was just beginning.